Welcome to Shadow Shorts. This is where every day at noon Eastern, I bring to you a short conversation with an expert, a thought leader, a doer in the realm of innovation for the built environment. My name is Jeff Echols. I'm a senior advisor and the head of marketing for Shadow Partners. And today I am joined by someone who is definitely a thought leader, definitely an expert, definitely a doer, and also someone who is a mentor to our Shadow Partners incubator programs. I'm very happy to welcome Anil Sawhney to Shadow Shorts today. He is, like I said, he's one of our mentors, and he's also a director of the infrastructure sector at RICS. And so I'm going to ask him to tell us what that is, but we're really going to dig into something that's top of mind for an awful lot of people right now. This is one of the main topics that I think when we get into built environment, built sector, that matters to a lot of people. We're going to talk about standardized method for measuring carbon emissions in the construction industry. So first of all, Anil, welcome. I'm glad that you're here. Tell me about RICS. What's RICS?
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Jeff. I really enjoy interacting with you. And I'm very thankful for what you're doing with the mentor program and how you are bringing those groups together and having them sort of meet with the mentors. I really enjoyed meeting last week with one of the groups. So I work for the RICS. RICS is the Royal Institution of Chartered Surveyors. As the name would suggest, we are based out of the UK, but we are a global professional body, a charity, not-for-profit organization representing our members for the public good. So we have 135,000 members globally, including some student members. And we are unique in that we represent a broad brush of subsectors or pathways, as we call them, or specialisms within the built environment sector. So you would see some of our practicing members in land surveying. We have folks in planning, obviously construction infrastructure. That's a domain that I work in. We have folks in valuation, asset management, FM, and so on. So about 20 specialisms represented within RICS, and we play a significant role in setting international standards, writing about thought leadership, research, market insights, and a whole lot in terms of working with our members to develop learning and development that provides a pathway to continually learn new things, explore new ideas, and share back with the sector what's happening at the forefront of technology, at the forefront of sustainability, and similar topics.
And speaking of sustainability and the infrastructure sector, carbon emissions is a huge topic. We talk about decarbonization all of the time. I know, before we went live here, we were talking about the fact that at RICS, you've developed some systems. So is there a standardized system? What is, or a standardized methodology for measuring emissions in the construction industry? And what does that look like? What does it mean for the industry if we're measuring in a standardized way?
Absolutely. So I think it is, as you pointed out, sort of top of the mind for industry leaders. But I say carbon is the loudest, but not the only voice in built environment sector. So we got to look at all other outcomes also from our assets, our projects. But definitely there is a strong need for the sector to come together, develop, I think, standardized methods that are comprehensive, that are transparent, open, and as well as consistent, because this is a very crucial area. We got to make carbon visible because carbon targets are being set. But if we don't measure them correctly, we don't report, classify, and improve them in a consistent, cost-effective fashion, then I think it's going to be problematic. But I think lots of work is happening. It's like a complex ecosystem of standards, reporting structures, benchmarks, lots of data that's needed. Obviously, one of the key requirements is to connect the decarbonization workflows back to our design, construction, operation workflows. It need not be a separate silo of its own. So that's where I think a more holistic approach is required. So the centerpiece of RICS's carbon toolkit is this whole life carbon assessment professional standard. That professional standard was written by our members and our colleagues back in 2017. The first edition was released. On September 19, 2023, a group of expert authors, project leads at RICS, as well as our expert working group released the second edition. Now, the second edition provides a very transparent, consistent, comprehensive, consistent method of measuring carbon footprint along the life cycle of any type of asset. So the real improvement with the second edition is that you can do buildings, any type of building, but also about 18 types of infrastructure asset or entity types, beginning with, say, roadways, all the way up to ports or any thing in between. So that's a very unique way of looking at carbon assessment over the whole of life. The standard is consistent with ISO and EN international standards that are very commonly used by carbon experts when doing carbon calculations. It provides a modular approach. It helps you set system boundaries, because how you define your project's boundaries makes a huge impact on how the calculations or assessments are done. You can then connect this standard with a reporting structure. So ICMS, the RICS provides a consistent reporting format also, which is called ICMS, which is an international standard we have developed collectively, collaboratively with the help of 50 other professional bodies globally. So you have how to measure, how to report, and then in the UK, we are developing with the help of other UK-based professional bodies, what's called the Built Environment Carbon Database, which essentially will then give you entity level and product level benchmarks for carbon intensity factors that can be utilized in your calculations. Another piece of the juggle is also, or the puzzle is your carbon targets or carbon budgets. For the UK, RICS is working with other professional bodies to create the UK net zero carbon building standard, which will basically then have for various building types, residential, office, and other types, published standards by square meter of floor area, perhaps, which can then connect into this ecosystem, you know, how to calculate, you know, what to calculate, you know, how to report, where do you get the benchmarks, and then what are your targets that you're trying to achieve or accomplish. So that sort of fits into this whole ecosystem of various pieces that need to come together for our sector to do these assessments.
So as we look forward then, so we've got a way to assess and we've got a way to standardize the reporting. So you know, I guess everybody's on the same level. How will this impact the way that we think about or look at designing and constructing in the future?
Absolutely. So the standard is equally applicable to new builds or to retrofits or existing assets. What the standard does, it sort of connects back to our projects stages, project stage gates. And one of the attempts it does is to connect the carbon calculation workflows with our traditional design construction workflows. For example, we promote the use of BIM, not only for design construction, but also connected back to carbon. Now, the additional thing that RICS provides then is an integration between carbon and cost calculations. I think it will be fair to say that we want to decarbonize in the most cost-effective fashion. So the reporting taxonomy is borrowed from a cost planning kind of a structure or taxonomy. So we integrate life cycle cost reporting with life cycle or whole life carbon reporting in the same classification system. So as you are evaluating your material substitutions, evaluating which object, product, component, assembly to use, you're simultaneously also invoking pricing or costing processes. Therefore, now we see deeper integration with your traditional core workflows. Because if we leave it to very specialized carbon experts and leave it as a silo separate from all our traditional or core work processes, then you are creating a fragmented approach. So what we want to do is maybe through our members, such as quantity surveyors or cost planners who have expertise on costing quantities, as well as material substitution, take on this whole of life approach, bring in the carbon calculations, and help project teams make decisions on material substitution, best selection of systems, products, assemblies, and components. So I think that's how this will become deeply integrated. Lastly, also important is we promote circularity principles. So if you can bring in a top layer of circularity, or plainly speaking, reuse, and how do you give credit for reuse of products, components, materials in this existing building or a new building or a new asset, that would further help integrate it to our core processes and decision-making that is normally involved either in new builds or in retrofits.
So what's the, I realize we're running up against our time here, but what's the big takeaway here? It seems to me that, what you're talking about, the standardization is really a legitimate push forward in terms of sustainability. But from your point of view, and maybe the members of RICS, their point of view, what's the big takeaway when it comes to either the fact that there is a standardized method, or the I guess the need for what's the impact of that going to be?
I think sort of stating in a very simple term, carbon is another layer on top of our existing layers of complexities when we build projects, turn them into assets, and then run and operate them. The few takeaways here is that we need to now, carbon, you have to have a whole of life approach. It's not possible to do carbon calculations, carbon assessments, and decision making only for what's called embodied carbon. Some people call it capital carbon, because if you're putting a window, okay, fine, you can make a decision on the first based on the first cost. But truly, to do a carbon assessment, you need to take a whole of life approach and see how many times over the life of the asset that window is going to get replaced, and then do a trade-off between embodied and operational carbon. That is something that is required. So big takeaway would be start thinking of whole of life worldview on projects and assets. This standard is going to become mandatory for our members July 2024. So that's important to keep in mind as well. Lastly, I think this is not going to take place without bringing digital. So digital is going to be digital data standards are going to be an ally or a friend of decarbonization. So we need to bring that into the mix also. And that's why I talked about integrating carbon workflows with cost, design, construction workflows, so that we can make a holistic picture out of this. So it is not an easy task, I feel, but we need a whole of industry input to move forward also. But that's something we have to do in order to address the climate crisis that we are all facing.
Yeah, it seems to me that with this standardization, this has to be a big push forward into making some of these things a reality, right? To really, like you said, it's layers, and digital as friend of carbon, et cetera, all these things starting to work together in a holistic and sustainable, pushing us towards a sustainable industry. Anil, thank you very much for explaining this and talking about what is rolling out, what's coming from RICS, a standardized method for measuring carbon in the construction industry. We talk about decarbonization all the time, and I think this, to me, this is making those goals more realistic as we move towards the standardization. So thank you for this, and also thank you for being one of our mentors in our incubator program. It means a lot. It's very helpful to our startup founders to have people with your expertise in the mix.
Thank you, Jeff, and I really appreciate what Shadow is doing for the industry.
Yeah, thank you. We appreciate it. And for those of you that are out there watching or listening to this, thank you for joining us today. I'll be back again tomorrow with another edition of Shadow Shorts with another expert, a thought leader, a doer in the realm of innovation for the built environment.